Hello, this is Dean Hatcher, former WBA junior welterweight champion, coming to you from Ringside Boxing Show.
Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwaan Zahid, and John J. Raspanti today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show. Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we got a big show planned today, including, of course, our inquest into Saturday's Ruiz-Joshua rematch from Saudi Arabia. We also have an interview coming up with Dimitri Salita, former junior welterweight contender, who is now a Brooklyn promoter. Dimitri's going to update us on his situation with Big Baby Miller's contract. He's Big Baby's promoter, at least for the time being. And he's going to give us some information about next month's fight between Clarissa Shields and Ivana Habazin, which was canceled a few weeks back when somebody from Shields camp punched out Habazin's trainer, put him in the hospital. So, and he's going to talk about some of the up-and-comers in this stable of fighters, too. So this is going to be interesting. Let's start by bringing in our expert analyst. Travis Hartman is a professional boxer, trainer, and promoter from Osborne, Missouri. He's now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwaan Zahid is a boxing journalist from Toronto. John J. Raspanti is chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. John and I are co-authors of Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy, an Amazon bestseller. And John's got a brand new one out there, available on Amazon, and it's called Blood on My Notebook, Dispatches from the World of Professional Boxing. So, guys, I want to start by playing some audio that somebody recorded Saturday after Joshua dominated Andy Ruiz and regained his heavyweight belt Saturday night in Saudi Arabia. We've heard Tyson Fury celebrate in song, and now apparently Joshua has become a singer himself. So take a listen to this.
I am the champion, I am the champion, no time for losers, 'cause I am the champion of the world.
Nice singing voice, huh? No.
He looks more like Homer Simpson looks more like Andy Ruiz than Joshua. I think there's a very accurate comparison between the two.
Man, Riz, you found some shots on. You found some. What do you call them? Anyway, pictures of Homer Simpson that just matched exactly pictures of Ruiz, wardrobe and all. You got to post those on Facebook or something for everybody to see, because those are a killer. So, hey, here's what's interesting to me, guys. DAZN interviewed 51 people Friday, fighters, celebrities, and boxing experts the day before the fight. 22 picked Joshua to win the rematch. 22 picked Ruiz. 7 of them couldn't decide. We all thought it was basically a pick-em fight, but Joshua won a lopsided decision, John. What happened?
Well, Joshua was focused and Ruiz wasn't. It was very simple, and I'm actually, to be honest, Dennis, a little frustrated that Joshua isn't getting more credit. I think I saw a comment on our little discussion that Joshua has flaws. Well, yeah, we knew that before. He has flaws. He's always going to have flaws, but he delivered what he needed to do, and it kind of frustrates me in sports sometimes because we're all experts and we all second guess. And I get a few hours ago, I just wrote an article because I was thinking if he hadn't fought like he did, and he went in the center of the ring like so many people are saying they wanted him to do, and got knocked out again, they would have said he was dumb. And then I also read that he fought the way he fought. He ran around the ring, and that was dumb. So the point is that you can't win, I think. He wanted to win the titles back. He did it. he kind of changed his style a little bit. He lost weight. I think he deserves credit for that. I don't think that was easy for him. He did it. He's, right before the fight, I was thinking, logic should tell you that he's a better athlete. He should win. But logic goes right out the window a lot of times in sports. Look what Ruiz did the first time. But this was a totally different night. As I said a few hours ago, the narrative was flipped. I think this time it was Joshua who was focused, and Ruiz was the one he looked very nervous to me before the bell rang, very tense. He didn't train as hard. I don't know about Joshua. We heard all kinds of things, back to New York, how he trained, but he didn't look right that night. So it all got flipped. The criticism, though, is I saw an article that said lackluster win, and I just think that's unfair. This guy had more pressure on him than anyone, any of us know.
Right.
I mean, his legs probably felt like spaghetti when he was walking towards the ring. Probably felt weak, but he did not look it. He looked very focused, very strong, very ready to go. But let me qualify this. There's no way in the world he's a great fighter. He's barely good. That's why I said the thing about his flaws. We all know that. But I want to give him credit for what he did because, as you said, Dennis, 22 so-called experts picked Ruiz to beat him, and he won 10 out of 12 rounds easily. It wasn't even close. And he got close. He did get clipped a few times on the back of the head, and Ruiz got frustrated with him. He tried and did some dirty tactics, and he moaned a little bit. But he's right. You get hit like that, that's dangerous. So I think it's kind of frustrating that he's catching all this flack. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's more in the middle somewhere. See, that boxing is such an individual sport. It's not Joshua's fault that Ruiz didn't get in the best shape that he should have. That had nothing to do with Joshua. Yeah. Joshua did his part. If Ruiz didn't do it, you can't blame Joshua for that. And you can't, and I can't take anything away from him because he obviously did the extra work. He got himself in his best shape as probably he's ever been in because, he has stamina issues too. He didn't look tired at all during that fight, at all. 12th round, he looked fine. So I got to give it to him. Like I said, to qualify it, he's never going to be a great fighter. He's barely pretty good. It's just the way the heavyweights are, in my opinion, nowadays. They're barely pretty good. But what he did, based again on all the talk that we've had for months, was quite an achievement. So I applaud what he did. I felt kind of happy for him because there's nothing like redemption in sports, and there's nothing like proving a number of people who were saying, no, he's going to get knocked out again, he's this, he's that, wrong. But what you did, and he did it. He did it.
I'm on the same page with you. I feel like Joshua showed us Saturday that he's got a champion's mentality. He was under, like you said, enormous pressure. He had some monstrous mental blocks to overcome, and he conquered those obstacles. And had a great game plan. All credit to him. At the same time, Riz, Ruiz let all of his fans down he disrespected boxing by doing a 6-month-long victory dance, and we've seen it a million times before in boxing. But he did this victory dance apparently with a double cheeseburger in both hands. Here's what Ruiz said after the fight. I'll play this for you.
It was his night, man. I think I didn't prepare as how I should have, and I gained too much weight. But I don't want to give no excuses. He won. He boxed me around. But you know what? If we do the third fight, best believe I'm gonna get in best shape, and I'm in the best shape of my life.
Do you believe him? If they have a third fight, that he'll get in great shape?
I don't know about.
How can we believe him?
I do think he'll be in better shape, but to be honest, he hasn't earned that, right? Because this is not this is an adjustment that everyone should be willing to make. I think the main difference you see here is you have one guy, and this is where Joshua does deserve a lot of credit. He's willing to say, okay, let's see what I can change, right? Let's see what I can fix. he called Klitschko to get advice, and Klitschko said, look, you got to trim down your conditioning as harder as you get older, because you got to think, okay, what if it can't blow? Because if you remember, Klitschko had that problem in his career too, right? Klitschko's been kind of burnt out after 5 rounds before, right? When he used to stand in the pocket and let his hands go. Ruiz, though, on the other hand, the funny thing is, if you guys remember a month ago when we saw pictures, a lot of people were like, wow, Ruiz looks a little lighter. He looks like he lost 10 pounds. Does that mean he gained 30 pounds in the last month? Like, I think that's, no, I'm serious. I think that's actually possible. I think that's what he did, right? So I think what you saw also, I think you saw the pressure get to one guy while the other guy had to overcome the pressure. Like, you have to be willing to deal with the pressure. I think that's where the Buster Douglas moment was too, right? Buster Douglas against Holyfield, it's like, oh, okay, no, I had my moment, right? It's a lot to deal with. The difference is Buster Douglas out of shape was still 10 times better the shape that Ruiz is. Ruiz, and this is where you see the talent that Ruiz actually has. He was fought at 270 pounds against Joshua in the first fight, which is still pretty damn fat, and his conditioning was good, right? Like, he has a lot of great natural talent. So imagine if he comes in at 240 or 250, how great he could be. But you have to want greatness, right? This isn't. I think if he comes in like 250, like, there's a difference between being a big guy, that guy who's big bone, quote unquote, and then just being fat, right? And Andre Ward called him out. He was fat. That's it, right? His quote of, I think I was partying too hard. No shit, genius. You showed in 15 pounds heavier. You're nearly 300 pounds. Like, that's not this is not, I really like Ruiz, but you can't root for that, right? You just can't. Because this is where, I talk about Joshua. Joshua is, I said Joshua's flawed. Every fighter's flawed to some extent. Joshua did what he had to do. But there was moments like in round 9, and John said Joshua didn't look tired. I think it's because he didn't have to expend any energy either, because the guy in front of him was just a big floating meatball who's not moving at all or throwing any punches, right? So it's not really, it's not that really difficult to kind of deal with, right? You don't have to really throw punches against a guy who's just winging shots and barely moving. It's not like Ruiz was cutting off the ring and Joshua really had to force to move his legs. So in round 9, Joshua wasn't moving his legs at all. And Ruiz caught him a couple times. And it just made me think that Ruiz was able to get inside pretty easily when he tried, right? When he actually used energy. And I think that's the issue. He didn't use any energy, right? Because he didn't have energy to actually expend. And I think that's kind of the thinking there. I think Ruiz probably won 3 rounds, right? If he's 20 or 30 pounds lighter, I think he easily wins another 3-4 rounds, right? Because Joshua, Joshua fought smart for what values and skills that he has, right? He throws at a jab, he moves, he sticks and moves. But it wasn't like a Usyk versus Gassiev, or Hawkins Pavlik type of schooling performance. It wasn't anything like that, right? Like, it just wasn't. And I think that's where the disappointment is. The big criticism I have in Joshua, and it's not so much a criticism, but just kind of realistic thing. I think him coming in lighter at this weight is definitely much better for him. That's number 1. Number 2, though, is there anything about yesterday that tells you he would beat someone like Wilder or any of the other heavyweights? I don't know, and that's not a bad thing, because that's the way the heavyweight division kind of is now. Because I don't see him, he might, if he wasn't able to knock out Ruiz last night, a horribly out of shape, a guy who has zero head movement like that, I don't think he knocks out Wilder necessarily. And if he doesn't knock out Wilder, you know how it is with Wilder, right? If you don't knock him out, he's knocking you out. Plain and simple. I don't care how many rounds you've won so far. So that's something to be, something to kind of note. And that's where the performance for me kind of falls flat a little bit. That he should have been able to take out Ruiz the way Ruiz was looking last night. Because Ruiz didn't, he was threatening and whatever else, because he still does have, it's amazing for a guy that size and that out of shape, he has so much hand speed. I think that's where the guy has a lot of natural talent. The other guy's a natural athlete, and I think Joshua out-athleticismed him, if that makes sense. Right? He used that skill to power his athletic mobility. But I don't think, there's nothing about yesterday that tells me Joshua would have a chance against a guy like Fury, the Fury that fought Wilder last year, that is. Or maybe even against Wilder. But that being said, that's the way the heavyweight division is. Wilder might lose to Fury, and Fury might lose to someone else, and so on and so forth. I would like to see Ruiz take on Wilder. I think that's an intriguing fight. But that's pending Ruiz cut some weight, man. Like if he comes in at 250, which let's face it, is still not slim by any means, right? But this that's the funny thing. Last fight, people were like, okay, he's just this funny, chubby guy who has talent. And then the rematch, again, a month ago, we were saying he's probably going to come in at 250. And that's, as soon as I saw that weigh-in, I kind of knew the result, and most people did. I guarantee you, like, there's not a lot of times where you look at the weigh-in, that kind of decides the fight. This is one of those times. Because there's no, Ruiz at 270 was never a Usain Bolt conditioned athlete, but he still had sustained condition to go 12 rounds. Like, he could do it, right? But that was his fat threshold. Now he's just this big, fat, morbidly obese guy, right? And it wasn't going to result in wins. It's just not going to. Like, after, there's a difference between, it's like the NFL linebackers who are in season, shape and then out of season shape. They're big guys as it is. But when it comes to in the off season, they're just packing on pounds without doing anything. So I don't understand how Ruiz did that. I think the pressure got to him. And that being said, if he's in shape for a third fight, should a third fight happen, I do think he can beat Joshua, right? There's nothing like what I said when I saw in the first fight is what I saw last night. He still has more skill. He still has way more skill than Joshua. When he did get inside, he landed, I think, sometimes the more effective shots, right? We saw Joshua was like inside, like he couldn't, he took a few shots and stumbled around a lot. Like that's, I never really saw Ruiz stumble at all. He just jiggled a lot, but he's got to cut some weight to make it. And it's really, I'm making fun, but it's disappointing because you see the potential he has, right? Like he's just, there's one guy who just really tried hard to read back his title. So I think, funny enough, Ruiz is in the same spot Joshua was 6 months ago, where everyone is criticizing him for, a different reason. Where before, people are like, Joshua's weak. I think being in good condition takes a lot of mental discipline too. Just like Joshua had to come back from this. Joshua was never out of shape. Joshua's never been he's not, I don't think, I mean, I don't know what his nutrition's like, but he's clearly in the gym. You don't look like that without being in the gym. Ruiz, though, being in shape takes mental discipline. It's not enough just to go in there and fight. A lot of these guys just want to fight, and that's great. You got to do the work. You got to do the stuff behind closed doors that doesn't get any attention. So that's the spot he's in now. I don't think he's out of the equation for big fights. I think he's still sellable, marketable, and people like him. But this is the kind of guy where his weigh-ins are really going to determine the chance he has. If he comes in against Wilder at 240, 250, yeah, he has a chance against Wilder. If he's coming in at 280 or 290 or, I don't know, maybe he'll break the scale in the next one, but I just don't – he's not going to beat any of the top guys. Because even if you remember when he lost to Joseph Parker on the road, he probably won at least 5 rounds, most people thought, and he was horribly out of shape in that one too. So, unfortunately, just like when people saw Chris Arreola being out of shape, and this is crazy to think about, because Chris Arreola out of shape was about 260, Ruiz is like 25 pounds heavier than that, right? Just think about how fat you have to be that out of shape. But Ruiz has way more talent than Chris Arreola ever did, like by far, and it's not even close. So it's really disappointing on one side. You're not going to blame Joshua. He did what he had to do to win. I'm never going to fault the guy for that. But he didn't do anything that told me he's the number one guy or the guy to beat in the heavyweight division. And unfortunately, I don't think there is a guy right now. But if there is one, it's Wilder, and it's definitely not Joshua after last night.
Yeah, John, you got to from this point on, until he proves differently, you got to assume Ruiz just doesn't have the discipline to be a top fighter. He showed up at 283.5 pounds, and then he claimed before the fight that he wanted the extra weight, and that made us all roll our eyes. I know it did. I think Ruiz knew that was I'm sure Ruiz knew that was BS when he was saying it. What kind of logic is it for a fat fighter to get fatter as a strategy? We were all afraid of the fattest kid on the playground when we were third graders, but later on we figured out that athletes were the tough guys. So is this forgivable? I mean, is it easier than, when you got 6 months of notice, how tough can it be to get in the best shape of your career when there's this much at stake? Is there, am I missing something? And do you want to see a trilogy, John?
Do you want to see a third fight?
Not right now. I don't. I really want to know how serious Ruiz is. See, that's the question. What he said last night. He said he didn't want to make excuses, but he made a bunch of excuses. I want to see. If there is a third one, I don't want. If I'm Joshua's team, because everything Riz said, they know. They know that Ruiz is kryptonite to Joshua in the sense that if he gets close to him and he hits him right, because his hands are so fast, Joshua doesn't know how to react well, or he can't react like some fighters. So that's always going to be a problem. But now Ruiz has something to prove, and he has to ask himself if he wants to prove it. He said the right things last night, but, talk is cheap. Will he really get into serious shape? Because he's been talking about Wilder. He could end up fighting Wilder at some point, which would certainly be interesting. No matter what, he does have a concrete chin, so that would really be a interesting fight. But yeah, he's got a lot to prove, and I also think though, yeah, he probably heard a lot of the criticism about the weight, and he was dressed like you said, Dennis, and so maybe he weighed 5 or 6 pounds less, but that wasn't the point. I mean, if he weighed 278, which is just grotesque, you could tell even that he just wasn't in the same kind of condition. He was sluggish, and I mean, for 268 in June and not having a lot of time, he was in pretty good shape, as we were saying. So he's got a lot to prove, and he needs to ask himself whether he wants to sacrifice what he needs to do. That's a big question. I mean, I hope he does, because, again, I love redemption stories. That's why I enjoyed what Joshua did. You don't want to be Ruiz 10 years from now saying, man, if I had only taken my training seriously with the natural-born ability I have, God only knows what I would have done. I wouldn't want to be that guy. I would want to be the guy that said, like Wilder, look, I'm getting everything I can out of what I got. That's what you want to do. But Ruiz has got a lot of money now. He made, I don't know, anywhere from $13 to $20 million last night. Does he have, go to me with my movies, can he get the eye of the tiger back? Can he get hungry again? Which I'm not going there.
Yeah.
We made enough jokes about his weight.
I will. He's always been hungry. He will never stop being hungry.
He is just.
I will not let that go. No, he deserves. Let's face it. He can't come in at 290 pounds and not expecting some jokes. I'm sorry. Like, come on.
I know, and you read my mind, because that's exactly what I was going to say. He's always been hungry. So we're on the same page here, and that's unfortunate because. But again, when you make your own bed, you got to sleep in it, and that's what Ruiz is looking at. And okay, here comes one, and his bed is obviously got to have extra padding for all that weight. But he needs to just ask himself how serious he is about what he wants to do. Does he want to just take off a year and God only knows how much weight he might gain then, or is he going to be back in the gym? Is he going to say to himself, okay, that was humiliating? The only thing that a little bothered me a little bit is he didn't look too bothered last night. It was kind of like Joshua when Joshua lost, but Joshua was obviously bothered because what I heard was after that loss, he went out and faced his friends to make the reality of the loss very real. And that takes some moxie. And you can imagine how, the guy had to be in personal hell. That was embarrassing what happened to him in June. And then with the guy that beat you being obviously a very heavy-set person, he's been through hell in the last 6 months. So Ruiz is there too. He played up on the Snickers jokes and all that kind of stuff. Everybody making fun of his weight. He has to ask himself, okay, do I want to be the butt of all the jokes? His in shape is never going to, obviously, he's never going to be a hard body. He's never going to be a guy that you go, wow, look what he did. He changed. He doesn't have one of those bodies. But if he got down to 250, it's right. I would love to see what would happen with him at 250. And I agree with Riz. He gets down there, Joshua's in a world of trouble if they fight again because of the natural skills that Ruiz has. So, personally, if I was Ruiz, I would be going, man, I really messed up. But I do believe that the pressure got to him. And, Dennis, I think he might have been a little overconfident. That's why he made that comment about the extra weight. I think, like Alvarez, when he fought Kovalev the second time, he might have been thinking in the back of his mind, look, I just clip him on the temple again. He's over. He's done. I'm going to hit him. And he did hit him a few times, but this time it didn't happen. So it's silly. It's stupid, but human. He made some mistakes. Now he has to ask himself, all right, do I want this? Do I want to go to hell to lose 30, 40 pounds, whatever, to try to get back up on the mountaintop or at least get another title shot? Because he could, obviously, he'll get one. All he's got to do is win another fight. And I think, like he said, Wilder and him have been speaking. Maybe he'll fight Wilder. But he can't come in at 288 pounds or something, or he can't come in at 280 and say, well, look, I'm 3 pounds lighter than I was the last fight. Can't do that. Then you're just going to say to yourself, like all of us will say, well, he's still not serious. He's still wasting his ability. So I'll be pulling for him. I think Andy Ruiz is a super nice guy. I think he's he made a mistake, and whether he learns from it is we'll just have to wait and see. And whether he's sincere about saying what he did last night about this and that, and I did this, and I should have listened to my trainers. We'll see what happens. With his history, hard to think it's going to happen. But sometimes it takes people really, really getting humiliated to finally say, "Okay, that's enough. I'm serious this time." So we'll see.
Okay, let me ask both you guys this. Riz, you start. And I was going to ask you who are your top 3 heavyweights in order. Who are your top 4 heavyweights in order right now?
You know what? You're only as good as your last fight, right? So I think number 1, you have to go with Wilder. You just have to. Despite how many rounds he loses, he still gets a knockout. Can't criticize the guy for that. He has to be number 1 there. If we're going by, again, last fight, probably have to put Joshua next. He overcame adversity, like John said, a rough 6 months, came out, got the W, and now he's kind of corrected the wrong in his career. Number 3 and 4 when it gets tricky. You could still put Ruiz in there, right? I don't think you can drop him off too much because, like I said, I don't think Joshua fought pretty well, but we all still saw this as a very, very, very winnable fight for Ruiz, and that's why the odds were pretty close because people saw Ruiz's talent and he just kind of let it go. So if you're talking about fat Ruiz or very fat Ruiz is still probably top 4. Very fat Ruiz, maybe not so much. But I think he's still, I think you got to put him at probably 4, and Tyson Fury probably at 3. And again, this is only based on your last fight because that is the way boxing works. Fury that is hasn't been in a competitive fight really since Wilder, right? Wilder and Joshua have still fought much, much, much better opponents. So by all intents and purposes, Tyson Fury hasn't really been in a legit fight in 1 year. So his next fight against Wilder, I wouldn't say he's had 13 months off. That's not the right way to look at it. But I think his commitment to the sport is not the same as it was 13 months ago, right? And that's not really a knock, right? He's making money doing other things right now, like going to wrestling and acting and this and that. So he doesn't, I just wonder his commitment to winning. Because you're not going to beat Wilder unless you want to be disciplined for 12 rounds, right? And if Fury gassed out a little bit in the previous fight, if he comes in slightly out of shape, he's not winning that. But I think that's the order you have to go in. And a real dark horse is Usyk. Usyk didn't look good or look great in his heavyweight debut, but looking at all of Usyk's fights in his entire career, he looks great when it matters, right? When the world is watching and the bigger fights are. That's when he steps up his game. Other than that, he likes to try different things. He'll treat it like a sparring session, and he's like, okay, well, all right, well, heavyweight debut. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I can't really do that over here. Okay, I have to sidestep. So for him, it's when he fights better competition. Now, funny enough, Usyk's supposed to get the winner of Joshua and Ruiz, and apparently that fight is supposed to happen within 180 days. So theoretically, we might see Usyk and Joshua by June of next year. I'm surprised that Usyk maybe doesn't want another heavyweight fight in between, because it's a very different matchup for him.
I think, though, based on, the question that we didn't really get to answer last night is, if Joshua's 11 pounds that he loses, does that take out some of his power? Because he wasn't able to drop Ruiz yesterday, and I think he landed a lot of heavy shots, though. Because if he's not able to knock out Usyk, Usyk throws a lot of punches as a cruiserweight, as a heavyweight. Again, we haven't seen too much. But I definitely think Usyk's going to come in shape, and he's going to be able to get inside the way Ruiz was against Joshua. Joshua has also never had to deal with a southpaw much. And Usyk gets inside. Usyk's a great fighter. He has great talent. I don't think Joshua, that's what I really noticed yesterday. Ruiz, who barely moves yesterday, was able to get inside on Joshua pretty easily without jabbing his way in. Usyk's not going to have that trouble. And Usyk, and this is where we're going to really see the conditioning of Joshua. Joshua only threw, I think, 350 punches last night. He didn't really have to work that much because the guy in front of him wasn't working at all, right? So he was able to pace himself better. If he has to increase his pace, how's that going to go for Joshua? So that's where. So we might see. You're asking me this question right now. 5 or 6 months from now, we might have a completely different hierarchy, right? Joshua might be number 1. He might be number 5. Fury might be number 1. Wilder might be lower. There's a lot to see in the next couple of months, and there's going to be a lot. Happening in the next few months in this division, and there's a lot of other dark horses. Jarrell Miller's still there. Dillian White is still there, and we know the heavyweights are, right. No matter how, I think the difference is with other divisions. There's with the welterweights, there's Crawford and Spence, right. Those are the clear 2 top guys. Then there's other guys. The heavyweight division doesn't work like that, right? You can have the number 1 guy drop to 8 in no time, and the guy at number 10 can go up to number 1 in no time. That's what makes the heavyweight division as interesting as it is.
Okay, John, who are your top 4?
Well, I disagree with Riz. I still put Tyson Fury up there as the top guy. He didn't look very good against Artur Valen, but he won. He got cut badly. He didn't look, like we said, he looked a little sluggish. I think he was lacking in motivation. But I think about what he did with Wilder
and how well he boxed, how he got up. I thought he won that fight. I think he has the most skills of the heavyweight. I think he fights any of them, either beats them or he's right there with them. Now, whether he's motivated again because he's got the attention span of a gnat, as we know, and he needs to be stimulated doing other things. He's got the wrestling, he's got the acting. That's the question. But I kind of think he is. So I think he'll be fine in February against Wilder, who I have ranked number 2, by the way. And that's because of the one-punch knockout of Ortiz and beating Ortiz twice. He's another guy that I don't think gets the credit sometimes that he deserves, beating Ortiz twice like he did. He loses a lot of rounds, which bothers me because it's going to catch up with him, but you got to give him credit for having that TNT in his right hand. Joshua, even though I was raving about him, I've always had questions about him. So I have him as Wilder's 2.2A and Joshua is 2B. I think they're very close. Like we thought, they used to be at the top, if you remember, and we debated who was better. I think Joshua obviously is technically better, but Wilder got the big power. So that if they ever fight, it's always, as we've been dreaming about, it'll be fascinating. Ruiz has all the skill, and so he comes in like round 4
but you know what? Not really. I think Usyk is better in all ways. Just depends on what if he can take a heavyweight shot. He did in his fight against Witherspoon, but that was just a tune-up. We knew he was going to win that one. He didn't look all that good in that fight, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I've seen Usyk fight many times, and I wasn't very impressed for 3 or 4 rounds, and then suddenly he starts kicking it in, and he goes. And he's just such a good fighter. He's such an amazing guy the way he goes on the road and fights, so nothing seems to bother him. And then the 5th would be Ruiz, and then we've got Joseph Parker. Don't forget about him. He beat Ruiz barely, and I think actually that was because Ruiz didn't do enough. I think Ruiz should have won that fight, but he didn't. But Parker seems to have a new attitude about being more, punching more and not waiting so much. So his first fight out was pretty exciting. He's there. Dillian White, who happily was I guess, cleared of the steroid shadow or the cloud that was covering him. Glad to hear that is there. He didn't look all that good yesterday, but he was not in very good shape. So there's a lot of guys that because they're not the differences between them, Dennis, is not much. So that part, kind of like the NFL, they call it parity, where everybody's very close to each other. So it gives the fans a lot of interest because the top teams aren't much better than the middle of the road teams. So in that sense, I think it's true. The top guys are better, but not that much. Where one of the guy ranked 6th maybe could beat one of the top guys, like Otto Valen almost beat Tyson Fury. He was really close to beating him because of that bad cut. So I might complain and say, they're only pretty good and some of them are mediocre, but that's not really the point. The point is that the interest level is up because of this, and that's good because the heavyweights drive boxing. Unfortunately, though, as we know, when it becomes a joke, then it really hurts it. So it's always going to be endlessly fascinating when they fight. But I can't wait to see what happens when Fury and Wilder fight again. And Riz made another good point. A year from now, if we're talking about it, or even in 6 months, everything could be flipped the other way. And I guess that's good because sometimes you're like, when a big fight's coming up, you're like, yeah, I know who's going to win. I'm not even going to pay any attention. I'll watch it, but I've already got it all. It's going to go this way, and that's it. And most of the time, when it's like that, you're right. Here, we don't really know. So I guess that's good. Not I guess. That is good. There's some doubt, some suspense. It's like a good mystery movie, so why not? That's a good thing. So let's see what happens. But yeah, I think Fury, to me, even with his last performance, is the top dog.
Okay. Hey, one quick segue before we give you guys the rest of the day off. I've said this before, but I'm never unimpressed with Jermall Charlo. But at the same time, Riz, I wonder if he's destined to grow old fighting B squad guys like Dennis Hogan. If you're Charlo, isn't it time to sit down and have a stern chat with Heyman and Ellerby and anybody else who seems to be content to keep him away from Golovkin and Canelo and Sanders?
I mean, I think this is one of those situations where it's just, you're on the PBC side and on the other side. So you're just going to have to fight who's there. I don't think Charlo's not marketable enough to fight a Canelo or Golovkin. He's never been a pay-per-view fighter. He's never fought an A-plus fighter. So, I mean, I can't see him ever getting one of those kind of fights, which is, just disappointing because I think both of the brothers have talent. I think they are, fun to watch. They're not boring fighters at all. But again, you're not, this is probably arguably one of his biggest wins so far. And Dennis Hogan's no one will call him a great fighter. He's a very good fighter. But arguably, people know him because he lost to Jaime Munguia. But, and that was his, if you look at the other guys he's fought, his biggest fight is arguably, now you look back, is Julian Williams. So Julian Williams looked absolutely amazing in his last fight when he beat Jarrett Hurd. So I wouldn't even say that's even the same fighter. And that was 3 years ago now. And that's, you see those guys like that. I mean, Charlo, when they were on their way up, they're 25 and they look like hot prospects, right? They're both 29 now. That's not young, right? I think you're in the middle of your prime right now, and if you're not really pushing to get any fights, nothing's really going to happen here. Because if you look at that division, I don't think he's fighting Golovkin. I think the only possible realistic fight you might see him in is against Chris Eubank Jr. And I don't even classify Chris Eubank Jr. as a great fighter either. Daniel Jacobs, I guess, is a possible fight. But even then, I think they're suffering the same fate, right? He's on the other side there. Derevyanchenko, also on the other side there. So I can't, and Andre, same thing. So I can't see any of those kind of fights happening. I don't know who he's going to end up fighting just because, just the way Top Rank is really suffering at the welterweights, I think PBC is suffering the same thing with the middleweights. They just don't have the talent that's there to make fights. And I think, promoters need to understand that you're not going to have a stronghold on every division, right? So it's got to be some sacrifice here and there. And that's what makes the zone quite intriguing, because the zone's never really lacking in anything, right? PBC is really dominating the welterweights for sure. Middleweights, not so much, and that's a problem because they don't really have many other fights for guys to actually fight. But they need to figure out somehow what to do, because guys like the Charlos just kind of wasting away their years, right? And it's almost like two different leagues, right? Because we know Julian Williams is good. We know Tony Harrison's a solid fighter. There's another rematch in a couple weeks, but we don't think these guys are Golovkin and Canelo worthy, right? And you know what? That's unfair, because theoretically, yeah, those guys could beat Canelo Golovkin. But I mean, do you ever think that we're going to see Tony Harrison or Julian Williams against Canelo anytime soon? I don't think Golovkin is either. So I think these guys are almost the next phase of the middleweight division, especially if Canelo moves up permanently. Because I mean, Golovkin, he's 37. It's kind of crazy to think about. I don't know how many years Golovkin has left, right? I don't think there's many. I know he thinks he has plenty of years left, but I just don't see it, right? And I don't see, it'd be hard for him to get it's going to be hard for him to get a marquee fight too. I think Derevyanchenko, a rematch might be a possibility, but we're just seeing kind of two different sides. There's that one side and the other side, and I can't see a Charlo getting a marquee name in there anytime soon, unless he's willing to take a massive risk by going up in weight or going down in weight or something like that. But even then, I can't really see it happening.
That bites, man, because basically he's relegating himself to AAA, John. If you're one of the Charlo guys, aren't you looking at a way to get out and get over to DAZN to get these big money fights? And I mean, Jermall Charlo's got to think that he could beat Golovkin.
Well,
at this point.
I could say almost the same thing with Crawford, right? Why isn't Crawford looking
Sure.
to get out to go to the PBC side? Funny enough, right?
Sure.
You almost need a trade, right? You almost need like a basketball trade to work out. But yeah, that's pretty much what it's becoming. But I guess the answer to that is, and I'm sure Crawford is kind of in the same boat. They're getting plenty of comfortable money for fighting these B+ guys, where they would have to, I wouldn't say lose money, but they won't necessarily even earn this much to fight the harder guy and the bigger guy, right? And I think that's it. I think the guys who really want to sacrifice and do these things, and there's a reason why there's only certain guys who've been in the Super 6 tournament, right? Those are the kind of guys that you see. They're like, you know what? I'm going to control my own destiny. I am fighting the toughest guys. Because if you think about the Super 6 setup, all those guys are fighting the toughest fights available for like 2 years straight. And there's just no other level of competition that guys are usually fighting with, right? If you look at Regis Prograis, like, you didn't see Crawford in that tournament. It wouldn't have been great to see Crawford in that tournament, right? We would have loved to see, when he was, I guess he was moving up to 147, but that is something we would have loved to see. You look at a guy, and we talked about Usyk. Usyk's a high-level Olympian. He could have signed a cushy contract and, never really been in one of these tournaments. That's not what he did, though, right? He signed one of these tournaments, went on the road for every single fight, including being Ukrainian and Russia, which I can't even begin to imagine how that was. But it takes a certain, you have to be really, really aggressive probably with your promoter. You have to say, or maybe you just have a kind of a flex package with certain promoters. Certain promoters, let's face it, work better with everyone compared to other guys. I don't think Al Heyman / Top Rank are known for being cooperative, right? They're great for their fighters. Their fighters make a lot of money. But I think if your goal is to fight the best, those are not necessarily the promoters you're signing with, right? If your goal is to be a comfortable fighter and make a lot of money, which unfortunately, it's hard to do both, right? It's really hard to do both. Especially for a guy like Crawford, where everyone seems to be on the opposite side, right? Crawford is fighting, I believe, next week. Like, there's been zero buzz or interest about it, right? And that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't happen for a guy a lot of people consider to be the number one pound-for-pound guy in the world. Crawford's biggest win, probably his career, or most notable, was Amir Khan, and Amir Khan hasn't really done anything in a really long time too. So you're seeing a lot of guys wither away their careers, which is unfortunate because these are the kind of guys. I mean, should Crawford get upset in any of his next couple of fights, whatever people do know of him, they're going to forget about pretty quickly, right? People are going to remember Spence and his wars with Porter and what he did to Garcia because people have seen it. I don't think that's the same with Crawford. So it's unfortunate. That's just the setup of it, right? Kind of luck of the draw, and that's where you're finding certain guys willing to move up certain divisions to do certain things. I think that was an important part for Usyk signing with DAZN. saying, I'm going to fight Bellew at cruiserweight, then I'm moving up to heavyweight. I want Joshua. That has to be part of the setup here. And I think that's what it was. So I don't know if short-term contracts are the way to go. I don't think there's a right answer, but you're definitely seeing certain divisions be stagnant with certain fighters based on who their promoter and network are.
John, weigh in on this. Do you think Charlo's just failing to aspire to be great?
Yeah, I kind of have that feeling. I get the sense that he's pretty much content with what's going on. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Gary Russell Jr. A little bit. You wonder why he isn't getting the big fights and why isn't he demanding. Now, Gary has this thing where he only wants to fight once a year, so it's not really similar. But you have questions where you're like, well, don't you want the big fights? Don't you want to fight Leo Santa Cruz? And he says it, but nothing ever happens. And so you wonder if he's talking to the promoters like Charlo. Is he saying, look, I'm not getting any younger here. I want to make the big fight. I want to fight the best guys. And they go, oh, don't worry about it. We'll get those fights for you. It's like, and Crawford's a good example. Do a little segue here. Hopefully we're going to have Bomac next week as our guest, Dennis. We're going to interview him hopefully, and he's one of Crawford's trainers, and we can ask him about that. Crawford's 32 years old. How much longer is he going to be waiting around? He's fighting guys that we know, but the other boxing fans are like, who's he fighting? And it's true. There hasn't really been any buzz about his fight that's coming up in New York City and next week. So it is a head scratcher, and unfortunately it's the way boxing is nowadays with all of the promoters. They won't work together. They won't make the fights. And then in this sense, you're asking yourself, well, what's going on here? Because we've all been impressed by Charlo's skill. I mean, he looked real good last night. He was fighting a pretty good fighter in Dennis Hogan, and he clocked him with some left hooks, and guy's very quick, Hogan. He had a very good first round, but Charlo made the adjustments, and he knocked him out later. So he's such a good fighter, and similar in the sense that you don't want to wonder about him. You don't want to. He's undefeated. He's 30-0 with 22 knockouts. He's got to get a big fight. So it's kind of perplexing that this is going on, and we've been talking about Charlo and this for a number of years. We've been wondering why he isn't getting bigger fights, and it is something of a mystery, and I have to think that it's everyone is involved. He's not pushing hard enough. Maybe he is content. Like I said, that's my feeling, and the promoters too. They're like, we'll get around to it. Well, you got to stay relevant, and you got to nowadays, and they're relevant somewhat. But perhaps they could be even more relevant if they took a chance, but maybe they don't want to. I mean, the other Charlo lost a debatable decision. He fights in 2 weeks. So it's one of those boxing mysteries. We have so many of those when it comes to the sport we love. But this is one that is really frustrating. Again, this is why I thought of Gary Russell Jr., because both of these guys have so much talent. You want to see them in there with the best. You want to see how they'll do. And are we going to? That's the big question, hopefully. But, I just don't know anymore.
Yeah, man. I mean, whose fault is it that Charlo doesn't have a big enough name yet to fight Canelo or Golovkin? That's
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Hey, that's Rizwaan Zahid, John J. Raspanti. They are our expert analysts, and you won't find either of them weighing 283 pounds yet. So,
yeah.
One day.
Thanks, guys. Great job.
Hey, guys.
All right. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay. See you. Our featured guest, promoter Dimitri Salita, is about 1 minute away, so do not go anywhere.
You're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show, the hottest, sweatiest show on West Coast Radio.
I don't want you living with roaches.
Oh boy, is this great!
I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. You know, writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Raspanti and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Al Bernstein, Showtime boxing analyst, and I listen to the Ringside Boxing Show.
Al Bernstein says the Ringside Boxing Show is great. This is Thomas Hauser. Who am I to argue with Al Bernstein?
Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and today's featured guest is a former 140-pound world title challenger who has morphed in recent years into a formidable New York City promoter. Dmitry Salita fought professionally from 2001 to 2013, compiled a record of 35-2-1 with 18 knockouts. In December of 2009, he fought Amir Khan for the WBA Super Lightweight Championship. And his promotional company today is Salita Promotions, and he's got a whole bunch of fighters in his stable. Hey, Dmitry, it's been about 10 years since you were on this show. You were a rising star, undefeated as a fighter back then, and now you're back in the arena that's probably every bit as tough in many different ways as boxing is. I say that because one of my best friends here in California was a boxing promoter, and I got a close look at the stress he went through each time he tried to put on a show and bring it off without a hitch, and it seems like he was putting out a different fire, solving a new problem every hour during the whole fight week, and especially on fight night. It's a complicated process, and a lot of things can go wrong. Seems like they usually do. What kind of challenge is it for you to promote a boxing show? Can you describe your job for us a little bit?
Sure. I grew up in the sport of boxing. I love the sport of boxing through and through. It's good to be back on the show. Life comes full circle. It certainly feels that way. You know, I haven't been on the show 10 years ago. I'm coming back on, still being involved in the sport, but on a different level. You know, I love the sport of boxing. I had the pleasure of being signed and the honor of being signed to some of the best promoters in boxing. My first time being top ranked. So really, as a fighter, I really observed a lot and kind of took notice of the way things are run at the highest level. You know, that definitely helped me shape my business as I moved on to that sphere in my professional life. So as a promoter, most importantly, you find the talent. Then when you feel they're good enough, you try to hook them up with a proper network. Once you have a TV date, you look for a venue, for appropriate venue for a particular fighter. You find sponsors. You find a venue, you sell tickets. So all those things are, and you make the matches, which as you said, is a very, very difficult thing to do sometimes.
You know, since the earliest days of this sport, there have been a lot of snakes and weasels in the boxing game. So many of the major promoters you work with and compete against, I'm wondering how many of them you feel like you can trust. Do you feel like you've got to have your head on a swivel 24 hours a day in the business you're in?
Well, you got to be in the business, and you got to keep your ear to the ground, definitely all day, every day. And you know, the business keeps changing every day. There have been some major changes in the sport of boxing over the last year, with streaming platforms, you know, coming into the business, and HBO leading boxing. Actually, we had Clarissa fight on almost a year ago. That she fought on the December event. I was to see that Breckhart is on that card. So you know, the sport of boxing is really changing, and you always have to figure out and understand that it is, and kind of mold with those changes. At the same time, new personalities and new a new business, a new ways of business are entering the sport of boxing. I feel that I'm still young and I'm able to kind of grow and adjust, to the changing market. So sometimes you obviously make affiliations with certain promoters, and hopefully, if you make a plan for your fighter to fight their fighter, then there's a business understanding that both of you guys are marching in the same direction. But like in any business, you gotta be honest, and at the same time, don't let nobody mess with you, because the FDA, because it's like in a ring, like my trainer used to say, if you put your hands down, or if you turn your back, somebody's gonna hit you. So you always gotta keep your eyes on the prize.
Well, here's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the stress of your job. 2 of your promotions took a real broadside hit at the last minute in 2019. You had to come up with a late substitute to fight Tyson Fury after Jarrell Miller failed his drug test. And you also had to reschedule Clarissa Shields' fight when somebody attacked Ivana Habazin's trainer at their weigh-in. Do incidents like that sometimes make you wish you'd chosen a different line of work? I mean, do you have a heavy bag in your apartment that you go back and just beat the hell out of on nights like that?
Oh, so you're talking about Anthony Joshua and Jarrell Miller. That was a big plan for.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, my other here a couple.
I'm losing you there. You might have to move to a different spot. There you go.
Hello? Is this good?
Okay, now we can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So with Jarrell Miller, we really worked diligently and for a long time to align them in the direction of Anthony Joshua because we thought that was the best opportunity for him at that time. And with that fight being announced, being Anthony Joshua's first fight in the United States, we obviously felt that all the chips were in the right place for Jarrell to score a big upset. And unfortunately, fate has all plans, and the fight did not happen. That was a difficult experience to overcome. But but at the same time, one of the things that I learned from it is you can't eat chickens before they hatch, and that's part of business. That's part of the sport. Until the guys get into the ring and until the fight is done, it's as if it hasn't happened. So for myself personally, it's just important to obviously always be excited about what you're doing, but have real expectations and that'll help keep things in a more healthier way. What happened a couple of months later in Flint, that was obviously something that's more challenging to overcome because it happened the day before the fight, and it was something that was very, very hard to digest and to deal with.
Well, you've managed to reschedule that fight for January 10th. It's going to be at Ocean Resort Casino in Atlantic City. Clarissa's going to fight Habazin and defend a couple of her 4 middleweight title belts. Do you feel like there's still some bad blood between those two camps, or is that water under the bridge for those two people?
No, there's been a lot of leading up to the fight. They generally want to keep the butt, and I saw Ivana training the week of the fight. We had a public workout in Detroit, and she looks really sharp. So I know that she's coming ready and prepared to win, and she really feels, that she really feels motivated to be thrown the champion. Clarissa, on the other hand, is looking to make history again and become a 3-division world champion faster than any man or woman in the history of the sport. So it's really a big night, and we see a lot of interest from media outlets, from different investors, in terms of getting aligned with this night of boxing and this matchup. So we're very excited about January 10th. I think it is the first night of boxing on Showtime for the year 2020, and we're very excited about about the fight and about that night. I think it's going to be a great night of boxing. And really incredible that women are going to be headlining the first Showtime boxing night of the year.
Talking to promoter Dimitri Salita on the Ringside Boxing Show, Dimitri, how healthy today is women's boxing, and what kind of impact do you see Claressa Shields having on this sport right now?
So I think women's boxing is becoming very healthy. A lot of it is due to Claressa Shields because she has given it a tremendous amount of exposure. She spoke about it. Her second professional fight was on Showtime, and I gotta take my hat off to Showtime because they've really been supportive of Claressa and supportive of women's boxing. And right after Claressa fought as the main event on Showbox, you saw other women fight on television and other platforms, on HBO, on ESPN, etc. So Claressa really, I feel like, opened the door, and the pay grade of the different fighters went up because of her as well. So I think that it's not there yet. Women's boxing is really progressing in the right direction, and surely, and not so slowly anymore. I think it's going to be on the forefront with the men. And if Claressa wins this fight, she can be a three-division champion, and she's going to do something that no men boxer has ever done. And maybe with that, she'll join the pound-for-pound list at some point. So it's really a changing landscape, and I'm very happy about the job that we've done with Claressa and the fact that she is such a spokesperson for women's boxing. Even the champions that are in her weight class, even though she's very competitive and wants to beat them inside the ring, but she's always advocating for them to get the most exposure and get the most money and all the other things that come with being a champion, being a great fighter. So Claressa has been great in taking the sport of women's boxing to the next level.
Okay. Dimitri, here's something we see happen in boxing all the time. A promoter will develop a fighter's career, and he'll get the fighter in position to have a title fight, and then rival promoters start sniffing around, and they want a piece of the action, rival managers, and the relationship starts falling apart. Can you update us on your situation with Jarrell Miller, who was talking about fighting a different promoter?
I like that lead-in. Jarrell's on the contract. It's on the contract with us, and we have been speaking about doing a deal with ESPN and with Top Rank.
Oh, I think we lost you again. Still there?
Hello?
Yeah. Okay. Got you
Hello?
again. All right. Go ahead.
Am I back? Yes. So we've been working on a deal for Jarrell with Top Rank with ESPN for some time now, and everything is heading in that direction. And I believe that it will get done before the end of the year.
Okay. Otto Wallin, the Swedish fighter who stepped in for Miller,
he didn't step in for Miller. No, he did not step in for Miller. He did not step in for Miller.
Okay.
He fought Tyson Fury, completely separate fight.
Okay, sorry. I'm getting mixed up on these guys. Anyway, he's another one of your guys. What do you think might be next for Otto Wallin?
Well, we want to get Otto busy, and it's important that he gets back into the ring and continues to fight at a good level of competition. I feel that he did a fantastic job. Many feel that he beat Tyson Fury, so it's very important that he gets back into the ring and that he progresses, and I feel is one of the best heavyweights in the division. I think he's a future heavyweight world champion. Boxing is a very individual sport. He comes from a very small town in Sweden, and kind of following in the footsteps of Ingemar Johansson. Almost scored a big upset. But Otto's in New York now. He's training with his trainer, Joe Gamache, and we'll have to announce something very soon.
Let's talk about a couple of your newest fighters. Thomas Patrick Ward. This kid's a super bantamweight from the UK, 29-0, and you've also got a new cruiserweight from Moldova who is 14-0. His name's Constantine Bejeneru. What should fans expect from these two guys, Dimitri?
Well, Thomas Patrick Ward made his U.S. debut last year on Showtime. Sorry, this year, in February. And he fought a very good Jesse Angel Hernandez, and he just put in a boxing clinic. He was did just a fantastic job, and the boxing commentators from Showtime said that it was the most impressive U.S. debut by a UK fighter, and that includes Ricky Hatton, Joe Calzaghe, and all the greats. So I'm very excited about him. He's a great fighter. He has tremendous future. He's been staying busy in the UK. He signed with MTK Global as well. And sometime next year, he's going to get a big opportunity to fight for the world title, which I believe that he will win.
And your other guy's 35. Does that make him in a bigger hurry to maybe get to the other elite cruiserweights at that age?
Constantine? Constantine had a tremendous amateur career, national, international titles. If you look at his boxing record, he's beaten some very good world-rated fighters coming up to his position. Now he has an opportunity to fight for the world title on December 28th against Marion in France. And I believe that he's going to do a great job and has a great chance of winning the world title and bringing it back home. So Constantine is going to have his opportunity to fight for the world title. He's number 10 in WBA. Very excited about his possibilities and about the fact that we got him a chance to fight for the world title in France. And I believe that he's going to do a great job.
Now, Dimitri, you've also got an undefeated super flyweight from Detroit. His name's Jericho O'Quinn, 13-0-1, 8 knockouts, just 24 years old, and he just won a WBO international belt in October, ranked number 10 by the WBO right now. How close do you think Jericho might be to world title type competition?
So Jericho is the WBO international super flyweight champion. I believe he's the best American super flyweight prospect. We're working on announcing his next fight, which is going to be on national television. Very excited about Jericho. He's a great fighter from the city of Detroit. Comes from the hood of Detroit, a really bad part of Detroit. But he really turned away from the streets and turned his life into positivity. He's really an example for the youth in the United States and in Detroit. And tremendous fighter, multi-time national champion. He's really coming to his own in the last few fights. Very impressive in the last one. And I believe that definitely a world championship is in his future. And in his next fight, the fans are going to be able to see, national fans are going to be able to see what he's all about. But he's a really, really good fighter. Not a lot of American guys in that weight class. Brings back the kinds of Mark Tushav Johnson and Timmy Austin. So I think that Jericho, can follow in their footsteps.
Okay, tell us about your unbeaten super middleweight. His name's Aslamik Aidagov. He's 24 years old, 17-0, holds a couple of European belts. What might be on the horizon for him?
So we call him the Hulk because he's about 5'10", 5'9", and very muscular. Strong guy. He's been training at the Crown Gym in Detroit for the last year and a half. Excited about his possibilities. Also going to announce his next fight in the coming week. He's a very good fighter, and I believe a world title fight is in his future as well. Another super middleweight that I want to tell you about is Vladimir Shishkin, who fought on Showtime August 25th. He beat the very good and tested DeAndre Ware. He was the first man to stop him. Blue chip prospect, and I believe that next year he's really going to become someone that the boxing fans are talking about all over. He's a very, very good fighter.
Another Russian in your stable is Apti Davtaev, 30-year-old heavyweight, 18-0, 17 knockouts. How far along is he?
Yes, Apti is 18-0 with 17 knockouts. He's been progressing well. He needs a breakout fight, which is what we've been working on for him. Again, he's also been training in Detroit at the Crown Gym for the last year and a half. Big puncher, big guy, getting the American School of Boxing. Excited about his possibilities, and I look forward to American fans seeing him sometime in the very near future.
Okay. Just a couple more for you, Dimitri, because I know you got things to do. Several of your fighters are from Eastern European countries. You yourself moved to the U.S. from Ukraine when you were 9. What kind of cultural adjustment is Brooklyn for an Eastern European fighter, and how do you try to ease that transition for someone who's coming from the same region of the world where you grew up?
Well, when I came here when it was still the Soviet Union. So the culture was significantly different than it is now. Now,
Yep.
a lot of the Western influences have made it over there with, there's hip-hop music, there's TV shows, there's pizza and McDonald's and French fries and all that kind of stuff. So the cultural adjustment is easier now because the new generations have been growing up in a different environment. But obviously the language and some nuances are different. But it's been pretty good. They all like it here, and they adjust pretty quickly. But they live in Detroit, not in New York City. That's the training camp is in Detroit for all these guys.
Oh, okay. All right. Dimitri, fans have a lot more options than they've ever had before to watch boxing with Showtime and DAZN and ESPN and Fox and UFC Fight Pass and even Facebook. As a promoter, how do you view that situation? Is that a great thing for boxing?
I think it's great that there's so many different platforms for boxing. I think it's great that these different platforms are interested in the sport of boxing. The one challenge here is that each one of these networks is exclusive to a big promoter, and sometimes it's difficult to make the big fights because the world is split up. So I'm very happy to see that when a really big fight like Fury versus Wilder, like a fight like that can get done. But I think it's great for the sport of boxing. I think it's great for the fighters. There's more money in the sport of boxing than ever before. And there is more promotion for the fighters than ever before vis-a-vis these different social media and television and streaming. So the fighters can really become celebrities, much faster than ever before. So that's the good part. The bad part is that sometimes the content becomes a little bit watered down because it's difficult to find really top-level competitions for every one of these shows. Because on a given weekend, there could be 3 or 4 events, which is very difficult. So there's only so many fighters and so many good opponents that one can get. So that makes it a little bit difficult. But overall, I think the sport is very healthy. Some big fights got made last year. Some new stars were born, like Otto Whalen and Gerald Miller and Thomas Ward, and Soldier Conor Gashev and Vladimir Shishkin. And I think the sport is healthy, and I'm very excited to see where it heads into the next year.
Last one for you. How do you feel about Saudi Arabia opening up as a boxing venue?
I just flew back from New York City, and I, for the first time on a plane, watched when we were kings, and talked about the historical significance of having a fight in a place that's never had really big boxing before, and which paid record numbers at those times, and being in Zaire. So I think that it's quite interesting, and it's great for the sport of as a new country that is opening up its doors to boxing and paying big money, those big fights. That's I believe is going to trickle down to the rest of the boxing world, and it's great to see. Amir Khan, I think, fought there as well earlier in the year. So it seems to be that they are, open to doing big boxing, and I think it's good for the sport. And I'm excited about the rematch, especially with the fact that with the big weight difference with the two guys. Interesting to see how that'll play out.
Yeah, I guess Ruiz just weighed in 15 pounds heavier than last time, but he was wearing all his clothes and a sombrero, so who knows, right?
Well, he's definitely heavier than he was last time, but we'll see if that has any effect on the fight.
Yeah. Dimitri Salita was a 140-pound contender who fought Amir Khan for the WBA super lightweight title belt. He's now a major player in the rough and tumble world of boxing promotion. Dimitri, always a pleasure. Thanks for making some time for us today on the Ringside Boxing Show, and best of luck to you going forward as a promoter.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Our pleasure. Dimitri Salita on the Ringside Boxing Show. Thanks, Dimitri. Hey, do you like this podcast? Do us a solid and tell your boxing friends about the Ringside Boxing Show. Post us on your social media platforms and help us grow. Also, if you haven't yet discovered the best website on planet Earth for daily boxing news, you've got something to do right this minute. We update ringsideboxingshow.com with all the biggest news and most interesting stories 365 days a year. If you're a hardcore boxing fan, this should be your first stop every morning and might be the only website you need to visit all day long. Discover us now and you will be amazed, guaranteed. RingsideBoxingShow.com. We want to thank our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwaan Zahid, and John J. Raspanti, for their weekly contributions to this show, along with our outstanding British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin. And another huge thanks to today's featured guest, former super lightweight title challenger and New York City promoter, Dimitri Salita. And, of course, we thank you, Ringside Nation, for being a part of our worldwide audience again today. Keep your chin tucked, and we'll talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass.